Why you should be pierced by a professional piercer. Coming up next on Body Piercing Basics, episode number 97. So you should stick around. For those who are new to the channel, my name is DaVo. I'm a professional body piercer and have been since 1994. I own and I operate the Axiom Body Piercing Studio located here in Des Moines, Iowa, inside Skin Kitchen Tattoo. So when I talk to you about these things, I'm talking about a level of expertise that comes from being in the body piercing industry for well over 27 years. What we're going to talk about today is a common subject that comes up quite a bit in the comments. Usually in the form of one of two things. Either I've been piercing myself since I was 4, I've never had problems, blah, 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 onward, yeah. Whatever. You have a tolerance for piercings, you've had good luck, your body tolerates the piercing, and yeah, wonderful, great. The most common one, though, is I pierce blah, 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 and now I'm having blah, 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 and blah, 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 blah happening. What should I do to fix that? My first instinct is always going to be take the jewelry out, let it heal over, and see a professional. So I thought, instead of just repeating that over and over again, it'd be a good idea to just do a video on what does going to see a professional, what does that have to offer to you that you're not going to find by trying to do these piercings to yourself. So I broke it up into 4 subjects: safety, skill, knowledge and education, and support. Starting, of course, with safety. Number 1 thing is things you do not have in your home. First thing, an autoclave. For those who don't know what an autoclave is, it is a hospital-grade sterilizer. It heats things up to 121 degrees Celsius under 15 pounds of pressure for 15 minutes and kills 99.9% of all microorganisms inside the machine. Usually what we do is we wrap or put the jewelry, piercing needle, forceps, whatever we're using, into a pouch. Then it goes in there, we run the cycle, it comes out, and anything that's inside that pouch can be considered sterile as long as the pouch hasn't deteriorated or it hasn't been broken. So when you come in for a piercing and we start peeling off and opening all these packages, that's why we have them in the package. You do not have anything that's equivalent to this in your home. I know some people are going to say, oh, well, you can use a pressure cooker or you can boil water or you can use bleach or any of that stuff. It isn't the same thing. It's not always effective. You never know how clean the items you're using to do this with, or how clean the water is, or if you've got the bleach mixture right, and if you've got all the bleach off of the equipment before you use it and introduce it into your bloodstream. The next thing is, you do not have a dedicated space in your home where you only do piercings. Now, that's a space where you do not use the facilities, as in the bathroom. You don't go to the bathroom there. You don't eat there. You don't sleep there. You don't pet your dog or cat there. You don't watch TV. You don't pick your nose and rub it into the carpeting. You don't have that space in your home. A piercing studio, however, does. We have this space where pretty much the only thing that ever happens in them is piercings and changing jewelry and piercing-related activities. This space is also constantly cleaned and maintained to give the area, to eliminate the possibility of somebody coming in with something and then leaving it there and then someone else coming in and picking it up and taking it home, as in viruses. You don't have this in your house. I'm sorry. I don't care how well you clean. You can't create a space like this. And unless you're doing a piercing on yourself every day, it really wouldn't be practical. The next thing, number 3 on the things you don't have in your house. You don't have access to a large variety of jewelry. The human body from person to person is vastly different. A common question I get asked by people that are trying to pierce themselves is, what's the right jewelry size for this particular piercing? It's hard to answer that. There's averages, like we mostly do them with this or we mostly do them with that, but it really depends on your anatomy, and you need a large variety of different sizes to match your anatomy and that particular piercing. That isn't the same for everybody. It's different from person to person. So when you buy a piercing kit and it comes with 2 pieces of jewelry that are kind of close to what you might need, they're probably not going to be the correct size for you. Number 4, you don't have the proper tools at home to do the procedure. Tools are expensive. Tools are something that we use on a regular basis. They are an investment. They are not something that you buy in a kit that's made out of plastic. Things like hemostats, things like Pennington forceps. It really depends. Insertion, needle receiving tubes, taper pins, insertion guide pins, threaded, non-threaded. All of that fun stuff that we have to maintain, you don't have. And number 5, you do not have the tools in your home that if something goes wrong during the procedure, you can correct it, if you even know how to do that. Now let's move on to the next thing on safety. You don't have any proper cross-contamination prevention training. Unless they're great. I know there's going to be exceptions. You don't have to put something in the comments. I know there are some people out there that self-pierce that are from the medical field or took an EMT course or, first aid course in high school or something. But the reality is you don't deal with that every day, and you are not trained to practice cross-contamination prevention. For those that are a little unsure what that means, cross-contamination prevention is a skill that you learn and habits that you learn to avoid contaminating taking contaminants from one place and putting it in another. For example, when we try to set up everything that's going to be used on the piercing in a separate area. Anything that goes into that area, we only has contact with the piercee or the client and myself. That's it. We don't touch things in there and then touch things on the wall or go have a drink or answer the telephone and then come back to it, because we may contaminate all the things that we touched, or we might take something from one of those items we're touching and then transfer it onto the piercing equipment and then into the human body that we are piercing. You have not developed these habits. You have not been taught this. It's something you have to have the training and develop those good habits. And I'm sorry, most people at their own home, they don't have them. They barely wash their dishes. They barely, and even if the fork's a little dirty, they're more than happy to use it. You don't have that level of expertise. The next thing is, at home, you do not have the procedures, tools, equipment, and etc. to deal with contaminated items. When you use a set of forceps, when we use a set of forceps or a taper pin or a needle or any tool that we use, we have a proper way of either disposing of that material or that item, or disinfecting it, cleaning it, re-sterilizing every single time. And that's to avoid us getting something from it and to avoid transference from one person to another. You simply just do not have this stuff at home. You don't have things like hard surface cleaner, medical grade, that we soak the equipment in before we re-sterilize it or disinfect it, and then clean it with brushes and an ultrasound, and then rebag it and run it through the autoclave every single time that tool is used. Because you don't have an autoclave at home, I'm doubting that you have an ultrasonic tank at home. I doubt that you also don't have a biohazard container or sharps container to put all that contaminated waste that you've created by piercing whatever on your body to dispose of it properly, which means anything that comes out of there, you're just basically throwing in the trash. And if somebody happens through that and you have a virus, you're going to give it to someone else. The last thing on safety, you do not have the proper training, knowledge, etc., to deal with issues that may come up during the piercing or after the piercing is done. Things like, what do I do if the jewelry doesn't want to go in after I pierced it? Or it doesn't want to stop bleeding? Or you pass out in the middle of it? You're not prepared for these problems, unlike a piercing professional would be. And you don't have access to maybe some of the proper tools, equipment, supplies to deal with that issue. And if you pass out, you might wake up in a not good state. Now let's talk about the skills that you probably do not have. The first one is you have not done this piercing thousands upon thousands of times. Even when I started piercing and when my apprentice started piercing and every apprentice I've had, even when they got into it and they started doing piercing someone on their own, I still was supervised for each and every piercing so that we knew that it was done correctly. You don't have a mentor over your shoulder going, yeah, you want to adjust that a little bit. Hey, you really want to watch out on that, or this is going to be this way, or that's going to be that way. All you have is what little knowledge you've gleaned off the internet. You have not done these piercings over and over and over again. Number 2, you haven't studied the human anatomy and how it relates to piercings. I think this is self-explanatory. One of the skills you develop as a piercer is adapting from person to person because their anatomy is different. Shaping or moving that or placing that piercing into that person's anatomy. You have not developed that skill by doing a set of lobes once when you were 14. You just don't have it. Not at the level you're going to have with a professional who's done it time and time and time again. You can't size jewelry correctly. And I know it's the case because I constantly get that question from people trying to pierce themselves. You have not done enough piercings to understand how much space it's going to need, how much swelling is usually encountered, and how big it needs to be or how small it needs to be. That is something that you learn from doing piercings and having a mentor and going through the process of learning what works right. And you get that from, back to number 1, doing piercings over and over and over again. The next one thing a piercer is going to do that you may not have the ability to do is perform a piercing smoothly, quickly, and with the least amount of trauma. When you have that motor skill from doing piercings over and over again, it becomes second nature. You're not going to hesitate. You're not going to put it in a little bit and stop, and you're not going to jab it in as hard as you can, where it's going to create a lot more trauma. You're going to do it smoothly and proficiently. Now, the last one on skills is you probably don't have the ability to get the jewelry in smoothly without any issue. One of the skills we have to develop as a piercer is learning how to pierce and then insert jewelry. It can be extremely difficult. Even the most skilled and experienced piercer can struggle with this from time to time, including myself. It is not an easy skill to pick up, and the only way, once again, I'm kind of repeating myself, the only way you learn how to do this is by doing them over and over and over again. Now let's talk about knowledge and education. One of the biggest things you're going to get when you go see a piercer, a professional, is a pre-piercing consultation. In that consultation, he or she is going to, or they are going to cover things like the risks that are involved with getting that particular piercing, what it's going to take or what type of dedication it's going to need to heal the piercing properly. Also, whether or not you have the proper anatomy for this particular piercing. And that's something you can't do on the internet. The next thing the piercer is going to offer is sizing and selecting the jewelry. They're going to give you options. They're going to give you suggestions. They're going to be able to walk you through the process of getting the correct jewelry that's going to work best in that piercing initially. Then lastly, of course, is proper aftercare instructions. After the piercing is over and done and they've walked you through it and they've given you this great experience with bedside manner and etc., which is another thing that's important when you go see a piercer, They're going to go through some basic information on how to heal the piercing. They're going to give you written instructions. They're going to go through it. They're going to make sure that by the time you leave, you're going to have enough information that you're going to be able to heal that piercing without any risk of infection or other problem. Now let's talk about support. This is the part I think a lot of people miss and try to replace by making comments on YouTube videos, which I enjoy. I love answering them. I love our community, but I'm not a replacement for, and often if you read them enough, you'll see something that's repeated over and over again. Nothing replaces seeing the piercing firsthand. It would be best if you go see your piercer. And the reason for that is even if you send me a photograph, a video, etc., it's flat. It's not two-dimensional. It's often very difficult to know exactly what's going on. The other thing is I can't fill a photo or a description or a video. I can only do that in person. And a lot of times, especially if you're having issues, that's the only thing that's going to work. So if there's an issue, that support from a piercer in your area that has knowledge in dealing with these issues can be very, very important. It can take a really bad situation and make it tolerable or at least better. They're always going to be willing to answer questions and also give you any advice that they have as far as healing the piercing. I love it when clients contact me and ask questions. I love answering comments like I do on here. And a lot of what I'm doing, I have always done with my clients. It's part of my general thing with life. I love piercings, and I love sharing information about it. It's at the heart of this channel. So you're going to have that. If you get pierced by a professional and you have an issue, if you call them up and go, hey, I got pierced on blah, 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 this is what's going on, or I was wondering about this, they're going to be excited and happy to tell you what they would suggest and give you any additional advice and try to work through any issues that you have. The next thing you get with a piercer is the ability to do follow-ups. Like I said earlier, often the only thing that's going to solve the problem is actually seeing the piercing firsthand and trying to figure out what's going on if there's an issue. But it's also not a bad idea, even if things are going well, just to get kind of that reassurance that things are fine. You can't get that if you did the piercing yourself. I don't know who you would go to for a follow-up. I guess you could visit yourself in a different part of the house and pretend you're not who you are, but you don't have that type of support. Now, the last thing I want to mention in the support section and the video is changing jewelry. Anybody that's changed jewelry on any piercing understands that it can be very difficult. There's threaded ends, there's push pins, there's rings with balls and things that come off and have to be done properly, and you can't see what you're doing sometimes, and it can be really stressful because if you don't get the jewelry back in, you might lose the piercing. Having a professional that's willing to do that for you, either for free or for a small fee, is very helpful in reassuring. It's much easier to go, hey, I'm going to stop by the shop. Can you put this in for me? Or I need a new piece. Can you buy this for me? Or I lost a ball. Do you have any of those? You're not going to have that if you pierce yourself at home. So I hope that kind of sums up everything that you are looking for when trying to figure out whether you should pierce yourself at home or if you should actually do what you should do, which is get a professional piercer. Maybe you've never had that experience. Maybe you're a little unsure of why that they cost what they do. They cost what they do for these reasons. So if you found the video interesting, edifying, or just downright entertaining, give me a thumbs up. Let me know if you liked it. Also, if you haven't subscribed, hit the subscription and then ring that notification bell so that you're notified every single time we post something. If you like merch, you like t-shirts, you like swag, you like tote bags, phone cases, all kinds of fun stuff that has to do with body art, check out our merch store. Link is in the description. There's also one of those merch bars down below. Till next time, here's hoping all your piercings heal with ease and without a single issue. And if you're in the Des Moines, Iowa area, I hope to see you for your body piercing needs in the future. Have a good day, everybody. Take care. Take care of your piercings. See your piercer. We get lonely sometimes. And happy future piercings. We'll see you in the next video.